Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by ServPro. Cleaning, restoration, construction.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Tyler Atkinson talk coming up, but we begin here day 2, SEC Media Days in Atlanta, with something close to breaking news. Kirby Smart speaking to local UGA-related media early this morning before the kind of official proceedings of SEC Media Days begins, clarifying 2 issues that have been heavy in discussion kind of leading into this Georgia appearance today. Obviously, it was a little bit of an eyebrow-raising announcement from Georgia last week when quarterback Gunnar Stockton was announced as one of the attendees for Georgia with Media Days. Now, listen, there are 11 quarterbacks from the SEC here this week, so Georgia bringing Gunnar Stockton, from that standpoint, not exactly notable. But Kirby Smart has not always brought his quarterback to Media Days, and historically has not brought a quarterback to Media Days in those years in which there was at least some question as to who his starting quarterback was going to be. Case in point, Carson Beck did not come with Georgia in 2023. So it was interesting, to say the least, when Stockton was announced as someone who'd be with Georgia here today. Kirby, though, telling local media earlier this morning that just because Gunnar is here for Media Days, that does not mean right now that Kirby is ready to announce him and name him as Georgia's starting quarterback. That is the word coming from Kirby Smart on that. Now, my interpretation of this is it's mostly just semantics. This is mostly just a manner of speaking. I think it's always been, to me, abundantly clear that Gunnar Stockton would be the Georgia starting quarterback. I do believe the fact that he is here indicates that Georgia also knows this as well, which we essentially would assume they do, just given that they started him in the game against Notre Dame in the college football playoff. But Kirby at least still giving, if you want to call it lip service, to the quarterback competition that will play out involving Stockton and Ryan Puglisi when fall camp begins in just a couple of weeks. This coming from Kirby Smart just a little bit earlier this morning. Also, it has been reported going back to the start of the weekend, or I should say the start of SEC Media Days at the end of the weekend, that Will Muschamp is no longer listed as a UGA staffer. He has been in a support staff role at Georgia, was away from the team a good bit during the 2024 season. Kirby Smart says that Muschamp, in some form, some fashion, will still have a role with Georgia, just not listed as a staff member right now. Those 2 news updates coming from Kirby Smart earlier this morning. We will give you more from Kirby throughout the day as it kind of becomes available to us. We're watching that very closely here. In fact, if you are on video today, over my left shoulder in just a couple of minutes, you'll actually see Kirby Smart at the main podium speaking to the media throngs, and that's actually happening right now. Kirby Smart is down there, so all of that getting ready to get going here right now. Kirby Smart speaking to the media at SEC Media Days. We're following that closely. Something, though, that Smart will not be able to talk about, but is certainly heavy on the mind of Georgia fans today. We found out yesterday, and there you go. We go full screen here. You do see Smart right now. That is him. That is live. If you were watching this during the live 10 a.m. hour, speaking to the media here right now. We found out yesterday that 5-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson has now targeted today as his commitment decision day. Let me show you this on the screen as reported yesterday from our friends at On3. Atkinson not only will make his announcement today, but he'll kind of do so with some grand fanfare. Hayes Foss reporting that he's going to announce his commitment today on the Pat McAfee show. Now, McAfee was in Atlanta last night for the Home Run Derby, a part of ESPN's coverage, which essentially has totally ruined that event, but it's a completely different story for a different day. McAfee, though, I believe, has kind of gone back to his regular studio. I believe that's where Atkinson will be, at least based on some recent chatter of today. I may have that wrong, but I believe that's right. Finalists here, of course, you know, Clemson, Georgia, Oregon, and Texas. Now, all of this going down sometime this afternoon during the Pat McAfee broadcast window. Many of you are already aware of this because you spend as much time on the internet as I do, but in case you're not, the general consensus here, obviously big, bold print names in kind of the reporter world, the general consensus here is that Atkinson is going to choose Texas when he makes this announcement later on today. That's the sort of expectation on all of that. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts as it relates to this, and I'm going to try to be careful as I say this because I think that my general mood on some of this may be a little bit different than some of yours perhaps is. Look, Atkinson's a player that I've been well aware of since he was in the 8th grade. This is one of the top players in Georgia, perhaps one of the top players in recent history in Georgia. And it's clearly a player that you would like to see Georgia get. And it's obviously frustrating when, after years and years and years of thinking that Georgia was in a good spot for Atkinson, at the very last minute, he ends up not coming to Georgia. I do understand all of that, and I don't want to be like flippant about Georgia fans who feel that way. And I don't want to be guilty of perhaps a phrase you've heard used before. I don't want to be guilty of what comes across as like gaslighting you into trying to make you feel like this isn't some sort of big deal, when for years this has been hyped as one of the biggest decisions that would exist for Georgia in the class of 2026. In other words, we have obviously hyped this up. We've done Atkinson as a topic here on our show, DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro, over and over again. It would be disingenuous, therefore, for me on his decision day, when it seems like he's not going to Georgia, to come on here and say, no big deal. Who cares? There are other good linebackers out there. That would be disingenuous for me to do that. So I want to be really careful then that it doesn't come across as if I am doing that. I want to be really careful with that. However, at the same time, I also have to be candid with you about my overall opinion about this. And my opinion is, even in light of what's likely to be bad news for Georgia with Atkinson today, I'm still happy about the current state of Georgia recruiting. I'm still happy about the 2026 recruiting class. And frankly, I have lived through a lot of these battles in previous years in which Georgia has not certainly gotten everybody it wanted, especially if that player happened to play for Grayson High School. This is just a thing that I think sometimes happens. It is an L. Georgia is taking the L today, or at least that's what the prognostications would have you believe. Georgia is taking the L today when it comes to Tyler Atkinson. But I do think you just sort of shake some of that off sometimes, and you do kind of reflect on what else is going on for Georgia, and what else is going on for UGA is they currently have the number 1 overall class, at least for now. And as Kirby Smart speaks here at SEC Media Day, they are also reigning champs here in this league. I don't necessarily want to be too fatalistic about the Atkinson news overall. I do, though, to kind of slightly shift the talking point, want to reflect something else that I think you hear from fans. And this is where my job as a talk show host that speaks with fans every single day, someone who follows recruiting, in other words, is a lot different than those who actually live in the trenches and they're reporting on recruiting on a regular basis. This is where I think I'm a good bit different than my media brethren. I think I understand something about fans right now that I don't know that there's a solution to this problem. I don't know there's something you do about this, but I do believe it's very real. I think a lot of fans are really frustrated with the recruiting process that, this college football season, our regular season, is the shortest of all the major sports. Most of our year is spent waiting on football season to occur. And one of the things we do while we're waiting for the season to get here, one of the things we do is we follow recruiting. Recruiting is interesting because it's the lifeblood of the actual team on the field, but it's also a useful tool because it helps us pass the time between the non-football season time of year. And for a lot of fans, this is a major pastime. It's one of the reasons why there's a really big infrastructure built around the recruiting media, subscription sites that cover this stuff in a way that doesn't exist for anything else in sports, because a lot of fans are just very interested in this. And I think one of the things I'm hearing from a lot of those fans is, and as I said before, I don't know what you do about this. I don't know if it is a problem to solve. I don't know if it's a problem that can be solved. But there is a lot of frustration that the recruiting process just doesn't feel like it used to. And this is not necessarily a woe is me thing about NIL, because, frankly, we've made peace with that a long time ago, and we think that Georgia is doing about as well with that as almost anybody could. But they see someone like Atkinson take literally countless visits to Georgia, playing a position that Georgia's had more success with than any other program in all of college football. And at the very last minute, on the basis of what seems like sort of one visit, fresh off at what our Jeff Sentell described as sort of a grand slam home run visit to Georgia, one visit to Texas sort of changes all of this. So I do take fans seriously when they say they're frustrated by that. I sort of understand where some of that comes from. I truly do. I think it's also important to note, though, that the narrative of, oh, well, if Texas wants to spin big, there's nothing that Georgia can do, citing Justice Terry at the end of the last cycle, perhaps guessing what Tyler Atkinson may do today. It's important to note that there are, whether you realize it or not, whether you pay full attention to it or not, there are counterexamples to that. I mean, we're led to believe very smart people who know more about this than I do, will tell you that Georgia was certainly not the biggest NIL offer for Caden Prothro on Saturday when he chose Georgia, the 5-star tight end. There were others that were perhaps making bigger offers. One of those perhaps led to believe maybe Texas, and yet Georgia still won that battle. So let me try to sum all of this up this way. It is a loss, and losses always hurt, whether it's an on-field loss or a recruiting trail loss. If you're a Georgia fan, you love following the program, you're frustrated by that. Losses sting. This is a loss that stings. That is indeed the case. But Georgia's also getting plenty of wins. And even though the recruiting process feels a little different than it used to, overall, Georgia's still navigating this pretty well. After all, they come in today with the nation's #1 class. All right, so let's get ready to shift gears to something else here. Kirby Smart speaking with media here today. Now, you got to be patient with me just a little bit because all of this is happening on the fly here right now. Kirby speaking at the main podium. He spoke with some other media just a few minutes ago. He spoke with our local media, including our DawgNation folks, earlier than that. So throughout the day, including during our show, we're just sort of a free-for-all here, letting you know everything that Kirby Smart has had to say. And it's really timely. Just a couple of minutes ago, and a great job by our Jay Black and Cody Chaffins for turning this around as quickly as they did on the subject of recruiting on what is a day when obviously it looks like Tyler Atkinson's going to go elsewhere. Smart can't mention Atkinson by name and probably wouldn't even if he could. But in terms of how it is that Georgia is winning these recruiting battles right now and what it's selling in the competitive races and wars that it's a part of, Kirby Smart once again doubled down on just how much Georgia values the relationships in all of this. This is compelling from Kirby Smart. It happened just a couple of minutes ago. Let's hear that right now on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro.
Day in, day out grind, the commitment to what you believe in, and also the acceptance of change. The job is not the same as when I started 10 years ago as a head coach. It's not the same as 19 years ago when I went to Alabama with Nick. It's just changed so much. So are you comfortable, being uncomfortable? And that's probably never going to change. I thought Sankey did a great opening statement in saying that college football is not broken or college athletics isn't broken. It's just going through a change. And you've got to be able to adapt with that. And I think staying on top comes from your ability to retain, have retention, have continuity on your staff, and be able to be open and enjoy the complexities of what we're dealing with right now. And there's some complexities, but I enjoy the puzzle pieces you have to put together every year to put together a good team.
So, once again, very interesting from Kirby Smart. And I said this before. A lot of fans are having to make peace with following recruiting just feels a little different than it used to. Interesting to hear Kirby Smart say there, hey, there is no doubt that the way in which we go about recruits is also different than it used to be. But, y'all, listen to the level of peace and contentment that seems to exist in Smart's tone as he makes that point. Georgia is not getting everybody that wants. But I've also sat here and, gnashed teeth over guys that Georgia didn't get going on 10 years now. Georgia's never gotten every single player that it wants. But even in the midst of all of this chaos, Georgia's still doing very well. And that's not me trying to sunshine pump you or, tell you that everything is perfect. It's me simply pointing out the facts. Georgia is, as of today, still #1 in recruiting whether it gets Tyler Atkinson or not. At least of this morning, that was the case. Now, as I said to kick off the show, the sort of big news is the presence of Gunnar Stockton here for Georgia, and what that means for his outlook is what we believe will be Georgia's starting quarterback here in 2025. Kirby also went into a little bit more about what he thinks about Gunnar Stockton here today and why it is that Stockton is here at SEC Media Days. This also Kirby from a little earlier this morning.
Yeah, the number one thing Gunnar does is he leads. He does it the right way each and every day. He commands the room. He works his butt off. And I say all that because, Ryan does a great job too. And those guys are going to continue to compete for things. But Gunnar's one of the leaders of our team. I think you saw that in response last year to when he came in, after the halftime and laid it on the line physically and mentally. And he does that each and every day. So when you look around the room and you talk to our coaching staff, Gunnar's been a tremendous passion, energy guy. We talk about that a lot, and he does it the right way. So I'm excited to see him grow and continue to get better.
So pretty good evaluation of why it is that Gunnar Stockton is here and what his presence is going to be like. Spoiler alert, we expect this afternoon here on DawgNation Daily to get our own chance to speak to Gunnar Stockton. We hope to have that for you on tomorrow's show, perhaps this afternoon too. We'll also be putting some stuff out on video, so you get a chance to see Gunnar Stockton with us and kind of hear more about those leadership traits that Kirby Smart says that Gunnar is showing. And throughout the day here as well, a lot more from Kirby Smart, including more stuff that we're going to have for you on the show here today. Kirby Smart, I think, did a really good job of laying out why the stance in the SEC has sort of changed, but what the future of the scheduling model should look like, and in particular how that could impact some of Georgia's SEC rivalries. But this was really candid from Kirby. We're going to give that to you later on in the show today. For now, though, let's get ready to introduce the program. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by ServPro, free for all here, day 2 in Atlanta College Football Hall of Fame SEC Media Days. As I'm speaking to you, Kirby Smart is speaking to the media. If you're watching on video, you see that over my shoulder right there on the left side of your screen. You see that from Kirby Smart here today. Actually, I guess that's the right side of your screen. You see that here today. It's my left shoulder, your right side. So Kirby Smart is speaking. We're following it all and giving it to you here. We're also watching for the Tyler Atkinson news. 2 great guests here coming up in a moment. I'll tell you more about that in just a bit. First of all, big thanks to our friends at ServPro who make it all possible. ServPro, they are restoration specialists. What does that mean? It means when you have an incredible mess to clean up, you want it cleaned up by folks who know how to get the job done. I'm talking about a fire breaks out, water intrusion. Our producer, Jay Black, has been telling me about a situation that he's had where, property that he owns and, suddenly there's this huge level of damage, huge cleanup. And a lot of times this stuff sort of feels like it's ongoing forever. And honestly, I've been there myself. I've talked to people who've been in this situation. You sort of feel like it's never going to end, or at least you have the fear that that might be the case. You wish you could blink your eyes and kind of put it all back together. Rebuild it like a puzzle, clean it back up, a magic trick almost. Well, I can't necessarily promise you that, but I can tell you this. Our folks from ServPro can get it put back together for you and get it looking like it never even happened. That's what they're all about. They are, after all, restoration specialists. I'm talking about for small-scale jobs, for large sort of industrial level cleanups, whatever you've got going on, our folks from ServPro have got a solution to your problem if you've got major damage, major destruction around some property that you own. It's one of the most important things you can do. They do it well. So I want you to find them online. It's servpro.com. SERV, servpro.com for more on that today. That's SERV, servpro.com for more on that today. All right, we're live here at SEC Media Days, downtown Atlanta College Football Hall of Fame. It's a Tuesday for us. Obviously, that means Jake Fromm coming up in just a little bit. That's going to be a fun discussion, as it always is. We're also about to get ready to speak to another former SEC quarterback, and certainly the guy that became the main character at SEC Media Days, at least for a brief portion yesterday. In fact, as they lead into this, let's get ready to go around the doghouse here today. Did you hear what former Alabama quarterback, ESPN college football analyst Greg McElroy had to say? Letting it be known that according to, as he described it, very well-placed sources, big, important names in the sort of college football, I guess, analyst space, that Nick Saban was considering a return to coaching. McElroy said that. He, on his radio show based out of Birmingham, WJOX, the Mac and Cube show, he asked Paul Feinbaum about that yesterday. Feinbaum refuted that as an idea, but McElroy did say that yesterday. Now, Kirby Smart also had his sort of turn to speak about that, saying that he kind of basically downplayed the idea that Nick Saban would get back into coaching, which in a roundabout way, this happened earlier this morning, and there's a story about this at DawgNation.com. I'm looking at that right now. In a roundabout way, I sort of think that's a little bit of a misplay by Kirby Smart. You know, yesterday when Lane Kiffin was here, he said, yeah, I think that Nick Saban will coach again. Whether he does or doesn't, propaganda is one of the most important aspects of ongoing skirmishes. Whoever wins the propaganda war is usually set up to actually win the war. We see this over and over again. So the notion that Nick Saban might return to coaching is very bad for a lot of programs that Georgia wants bad things for. For instance, just this rumor alone, I don't think that's why McElroy did it, obviously, but just this rumor alone, I think makes Kalen DeBoer's life a little harder. Perhaps it makes Brian Kelly's life a little harder because Nick Saban also once coached at LSU. You've already heard, well, if Saban coached again, maybe coming back to LSU would be the place it happened. That's reckless speculation. It's not true, but it's still fun. So even if Saban's not going to return to coaching, which I'm assuming he probably won't, even if he's not going to, letting this rumor live, letting this thing float just a little bit, letting the speculation run rampant, I think it does cause some problems for some enemies within the SEC for Georgia who you'd like to see problems caused for. So playing the propaganda game would have maybe been a little bit smart for Kirby Smart to do. Nonetheless, that's around the doghouse on this yesterday. The guy who started the rumor was Greg McElroy. But in addition to that, McElroy, who knows the quarterback position in the SEC, also some very compelling things to say about Georgia's presumed starter, who is here today, Gunnar Stockton. We recorded this yesterday. You'll hear it right now. ESPN analyst Greg McElroy for now on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. And you're on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. Happy to have from the SEC Network and the Mac and Cube radio show there on WJOX, and, of course, ESPN on the weekends and everything else. It is Greg McElroy here today on behalf of Wayne Sanderson Farms. They, by the way, have a great announcement we'll give you here coming up in just a couple of minutes. But before that, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us here today.
No, it's great, man. I'm excited for Kirby to get here tomorrow and turn it up. Kirby's going to fire it up tomorrow, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm excited about that,
Something's coming
too.
tomorrow.
Yeah, you got to think so. There's obviously, I think, a lot of unanswered questions that relates to Georgia, and I want to ask you in particular about Gunnar Stockton, who's also going to be here with the Dogs. Before that, though, and I think you know this, you created quite a stir here today with what I think was initially intended to be kind of an offhanded comment. You've kind of heard that maybe Nick Saban might coach again. I was just curious if you wanted to expand on that anymore, because obviously that's the kind of thing that certainly, I mean, I heard all kinds of buzz here around the College Hall of Fame about that.
It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe the reaction. It was honestly about as innocent as it gets. So I had talked to some folks that I've relied upon in the past on pretty reliable information. So they're like, "Hey man, don't rule out Coach coming back." I was like, "What? No, he's not coming back. No way he's coming back." Like, I'm telling you, just don't rule it out. Just all I'll tell you. I'm like, all right. So I figured I'd ask Feinbaum. As simple as that. I'm like, I'll ask Feinbaum, and he'll tell me. Like, he's as connected as anybody. So Paul's on our show every single Monday at 7:15 Central. So I asked him point blank. I was like, hey, I wouldn't even ask this question if it weren't coming from someone in the past that's been real reliable. Like, have you heard anything about Coach Saban coming back? And obviously, immediately, no. I said, okay, good. That's the same reaction I had. I just wanted to make sure because I feel like if anything, there'd be buzz. You know?
My theory is I'm never retiring. You know what I'm saying? If I'm healthy, God willing, if I'm healthy, I'm going to work as long as I possibly can. I feel like if I'm Nick Saban, it's the same way. It's like if I could come back and coach, which obviously he could, he'd have no shortage of opportunities. If I was in his body, if I was in his situation, I would want to. Now, I like being a broadcaster, so,
I think he probably does too. I think it's a fun gig.
So it certainly was just a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
It's also interesting to see that Georgia quarterback Gunnar Stockton is coming with Georgia. This is not always what Kirby does. Sometimes quarterback comes, sometimes quarterback doesn't.
Right.
What do you make of the fact that Kirby and the other Georgia teammates apparently trust Gunnar enough that they're happy to kind of put him on display as a spokesman here this week?
Well, I mean, they were fully behind Gunnar every second of the SEC championship game that he played, and they were fully behind him every second of the Sugar Bowl. So I can't say it's like a huge surprise that he's the guy coming into the season, but what I found interesting is that when we visited publicly with Kirby a couple months back, this was in early May, we kind of asked him, hey, how's Gunnar doing? He goes, oh, hang on a second, hang on. This thing is far from decided. Like, we love Ryan Puglisi. Like, we love all of our quarterbacks. Like, this is still too early at this point to determine who our guy is going to be. And so that's the only thing that I was surprised by, is that he was pretty adamant about this being a competition that would continue on. And now to see him arrive at media days, what's changed? I think that's what I'm most intrigued by. Did Gunnar do something early summer that led to him maybe distancing himself from Puglisi and others? Or has there just been such a following within the locker room, and it's mostly player-led in the summertime? Are they just so far already entrenched in the Gunnar Stockton camp that they really had no choice but to bring him? That's what I'm most intrigued
So
by.
presuming that Gunnar is the starter, one of the things I think is a little bit interesting is when you look at the big games that Georgia plays, new quarterback for Tennessee, new quarterback for Alabama, Arch Manning, Texas, is still kind of a new quarterback once you get to November, that it's interesting that for all the pressure that Gunnar will face as a new quarterback, in the biggest games that Georgia will play this year, he is also playing quarterbacks with at least a similar level of inexperience, if not even more inexperienced guys on the other side. You got to think to a certain extent that has at least the opportunity to maybe work to his advantage.
I think it does, and just the identity that Georgia's wanting to become. Granted, Nussmeier's got more experience. There's a couple others. I mean, I don't know if Vandy is necessarily on the schedule regular season or in the postseason for Georgia, but Pavia's got a ton of experience. Joey Aguiar from Tennessee, he's got a ton of experience, but not at this level. So there are guys with experience, and the Tennessee game's early, so that we'll find out an awful lot about Georgia that week. But I don't feel like quarterback experience is as big a deal as it once was. Guys just come to school more prepared to play because they play football year-round. Like when I was growing up, it was baseball season, and then we took a month off, then we went to football season, and we played basketball, and then we get back, it's baseball season again. And then we ran track in the spring to stay in shape. So we played 4 sports, and not basketball in high school, but the other 3, yes. So it's kind of crazy to think now these guys are just more prepared than ever before to kind of step right in. And the college offenses have evolved to the point where the high school offense is not that dissimilar to the college offense, and that was not the case when I was younger too. So I wouldn't worry about quarterback experience, but I do think one thing that they absolutely want to be better at is consistently running the football. And that's been an error, kind of a bit of a surprising revelation the last couple of years, is their inconsistency just when you got to run it, running it. And one thing they haven't really utilized is quarterback run game. Now, okay, we saw a couple of years ago, sure, we'd see some quarterback sweep every once in a blue moon, but that wasn't really who they were. I think quarterback power, quarterback stretch, quarterback inside zone read to keep the end man on the line of scrimmage on us, all that stuff will be helpful, and that's all a big part of what Stockton does within his skill set.
I want to ask you about Wayne Sanders and Farms. Fun announcement from them this week. Let me squeeze in something before I get there, though.
Yeah.
When you look at what Georgia is right now from a win total perspective, right there with Alabama and Texas, the highest in the league at 9.5. I'm assuming they're going to be a preseason top 5 team when the real official polls come out. Do you still view this as the same Georgia team it was kind of circa 2022, or has a couple of years of not winning the national championship maybe caused you to kind of question the talent level now compared to what it would have been 2021, 2022?
They're not the same, but that has nothing to do with this team. They're not the same because it has everything to do with what 21 and 22 were. That was a unique blend of ridiculous talent and depth across the board. So I think when people will hear that and think, well, he's doubting Georgia. I'm not doubting Georgia at all. I'm more giving flowers to the Georgia teams of 21 and 22 to set the level of expectation and the bar so high that it's unreachable for pretty much any team that's going to come after that. This team could go undefeated, and they'd probably still say, yeah, I think 21's better. You know what I mean? I think, or 22 is better. I mean, no, it doesn't matter what they do, but I think just with talent kind of spreading out a little bit, I'm still really bullish on Georgia. I think they're going to be great on defense. I'm not at all concerned about what they have in the back seven. Up along the front seven, frankly, I do think there are a couple pieces that I'm curious about. As far as game breakers, take over the game guys along the defensive line, I know they have one, maybe two. And then offensive line, too. I think that group has a chance to be pretty good, but last year they had growing pains. When Ratledge got hurt, they weren't the same team. And they had challenges at left tackle too. So I think that's kind of what I'm most curious about. Georgia, the best Georgia teams are built inside out, offensive and defensive lines. Will this team be that way? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I think for Georgia fans, that's what they're hoping for.
Is there too much being put on Arch Manning right now? He is also on deck for the SEC here on Tuesday. Too much being put on him right now, or is it just going to naturally come for a player that's obviously got the pedigree that he has?
Well, he's 6-1 to win the Heisman. Second team is 9. Second guy is 9-1. I mean, that's all pretty wild for a guy that started 2 games in his college career. And I think last year too, you see him against Georgia, for example. Things were just going too fast there in the regular season. Everything was just accelerated, and Georgia just had their number that day. But you see some of the progress when he was kind of sprinkled in as the season went along. You saw him more comfortable, a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable after getting some starts, getting some things off of his chest, and kind of being in a good spot. So I think he's poised to be in a great situation. But I think it's almost impossible to be able to reach the level of expectation that we're going to have for him on day one. That is asking an awful lot. If he can do it, amazing. Power to you. We've seen several freshmen come in and take the world by storm. Some that come to mind, Jameis Winston back in 2013 and leads Florida State to a national championship. Johnny Manziel in 2012. Like, we've seen it happen before where day one these guys are just incredible from start to finish. That's not the norm. Usually there's a couple things where you kind of figure things out, or maybe you start hot, then level off, then start hot, then finish hot. So I'll be curious to kind of see what kind of track it looks like, but he's in a great position to be successful.
So people know Sanderson Farms chicken. They've seen it in their supermarkets for a very long time. And now, fun announcement this week, Wayne Sanderson Farms, who obviously produces Sanderson Farms chicken, also being announced as the official chicken of the SEC, and you're obviously helping to tell their story some here this week. So I know it's a very big deal to have that designation. I know they're now very proud to be official partners here within the SEC.
Well, it's really kind of, at this point now, it's just a formality. Like, they've already been ingrained into our culture of the SEC for years and years and years. I mean, I grill 4 days a week. Like, Sanderson Farms chicken's on the menu 2 times a week, maybe 3 in some given weeks. So, like, they've already been part of our story for a long time. But now making it official is amazing. To know that they're the official chicken of the SEC. They've already been supporting some of the poultry science programs at a lot of our institutions, including University of Georgia. So to me, they've already invested in our communities. They've already been a part of our tailgates, but now they get to have the official moniker as the official chicken of the SEC. We got a lot of really fun stuff coming up too. A lot of really cool promotional elements. They're going to be around games. They're going to be around tailgates. They're going to be omnipresent as we prepare for some of the biggest moments of our fall. So I'm thrilled that they're here. I know the league is thrilled that they're here, and we're just lucky to have incredible support from Sanderson Farms, and we look forward to them decorating our tailgates throughout the course of the fall. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, nothing SEC fans love more than football and some good food to go along with it.
Yeah, no
right?
doubt about it, especially chicken. I'm a big chicken guy for sure.
Well, listen, very happy for Wayne Sanderson Farms, now the official chicken of the SEC. It's a thrill to have you. Can't wait for these fall Saturdays. Watching there on ESPN. Greg, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks again.
And, of course, Mac and Cube show there on WJOX as well. Very busy man. Kind enough to spend some time with us here on DawgNation Daily today. Great stuff there. Greg McElroy, ESPN analyst, doing the Mac and Cube show on the radio. He's got his own Always College Football podcast. A lot going on with Greg McElroy, and a very interesting evaluation of Gunnar Stockton and the role that he could play in the SEC here this season. We've got another great former quarterback guest coming up in a couple of minutes, and that's going to be the former Georgia quarterback, Jake Fromm. We will get to him. Jake has represented Georgia at Media Days before, so great guest to have here today. Also, we're going to hear more from Kirby Smart and Gunnar Stockton himself. So let's do this kind of not quite cruise around the SEC because we're going to stick with Georgia. I will give a quick shout out to our friends though at Royal Caribbean, and obviously the real big fun stuff going on with the Royal Caribbean right now. The debut of Star of the Seas, it's about to happen. The newest in the Icon class of ships. So many of you getting your chance to be on that here in the late stages of 2025. heading towards early 2026. Our Jessica Slater can tell you all about it. Obviously, when Icon of the Seas debuted, it changed the game for the cruise industry, and Star of the Seas is ready to kind of raise the ante even more. So Jessica Slater, wonderful travel advisor, she can tell you all about it. Give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also email her, jslater@dreamvacations.com. We love cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean each and every day, and hope all of you are excited about Star of the Seas, the debut of the Royal Beach Club in Nassau, and all of the other fun stuff that Royal Caribbean has in store for you here in 2025, heading towards 2026. Now, we're going to do some SEC-related stories before our show is done today. We'll even let you hear from Hugh Freeze, who represents Auburn here today as one of the teams in addition to Georgia at Media Days. Teams like Texas is going to be here later on this afternoon. Auburn has been here around the same time Georgia's been. We'll hear from Hugh Freeze on the show. But before we bring on Jake Fromm, let me give you a chance to also hear a little bit more from Kirby Smart right now. I told you this earlier, and I happened to be in the room with Kirby a little earlier this morning when he said this. Kirby was asked about the future of the Georgia-Auburn rivalry because, as you know, if the SEC stays at an 8-game conference schedule, there is a chance that just logistically speaking, Georgia and Auburn might not be able to play every year anymore if you want to have a reasonable rotation between Georgia and the other teams in the SEC. And I think that Kirby Smart gave a very fan-friendly answer about why he was originally in favor of a 9-game slate, but also I think he reflects pretty accurately the current thinking in the SEC within the league that maybe that's not quite such a good idea anymore. I think this is really truthful and really candid from Kirby Smart. This is from just a few minutes ago, Kirby Smart on the future of SEC scheduling and some of Georgia's rivals.
I feel like we talk about it year-round except for during the season. During the season, we talk about the season, and this is the talking season, so everybody wants to talk about it. I don't have a preference. Forever, I was a 9-game proponent because it was better for our fan bases. It was better for television. It was better for increasing revenue, which is a huge demand right now on college athletics. So I like the idea of 9. My concern with the idea of 9 is, how are we picking the 12 or 14 teams and who's picking them and what do they value? Because I don't think we saw value in adding 9 more losses to our league last year in terms of the way they pick the teams. And, some people will take maybe resentment in that, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as if we're going to play a 9th game, we need the right people making the right decisions in terms of who goes in.
Sort of talking season chatter. Let me tell you, though, why I believe it's slightly more interesting than that. I think it reflects something that we noticed in May when the SEC had its spring meetings in Destin, Florida, that moment, now I'm not saying this is the moment when it happened, I think this is the moment we became aware of it. At that moment, the SEC demonstrated it had changed its thinking about 2 important things. There had been movement about adding that 9th conference game because they found out that now ESPN was willing to kind of open up its wallet and it was going to pay for it. So all of a sudden, every college football decision is usually sort of dictated by money. ESPN was going to be willing to pay for the 9th game, and so therefore it seemed like the consensus was growing for that. And then that changed, as Kirby Smart says, because of some unhappiness with the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, which means we were standing on firm ground a year ago when we were very critical of that committee as well. You also see the same thing about the future of the playoff format. So much so that we may not even get playoff expansion now. There's at least a chance we don't, because once again, the SEC that at one point in time seemed like it might be on board with the sort of automatic qualifier brand of expansion that had been kicked around, now they don't like that either. The SEC, very large entity, very influential in college sports, changed its mind, I think, on 2 important issues, and I think that Kirby Smart's words there sort of reflect that process. Smart also speaking a moment ago about some of the new additions to Georgia and why a guy, for instance, like Noah Thomas, transfer wide receiver for Texas A&M, for a Georgia team that needs to upgrade its wide receiver position, why a guy like Noah Thomas has a chance to really be a part of that solution for the Dogs. Here is Kirby on Noah Thomas from just a moment ago.
Yeah, he went through spring, and it was a learning progression for him, learning a new offense. We got a very NFL-style offense in terms of our terminology. It's very similar to what Coach Muckin used when he was here, and then Mike and James and Hartley and all the coaches on our staff have implemented other things and ideas. But the verbiage was important for him to learn. He worked extremely hard. He is a guy that's now starting to show his personality, and you get a little more leadership out of him day in and day out. He's got tremendous size. He's a great kid from a great family, and we've embraced him. We don't have a roster where there's an influx of 30 and 40 new guys from the portal. It's a very small community, so we're very inclusive. We welcome those guys, and I think he's been pleasantly surprised with how well he gets to know his teammates and how well they know each other.
So Kirby Smart speaking there about the chemistry that Noah Thomas is developing with the guys who've been here at Georgia. We know it's also the quarterback's responsibility to help cultivate that chemistry. How exactly has Gunnar Stockton been working to get to know, whether it be the incoming freshman receivers, the guys like Noah and Zachariah Branch who've recently transferred in, or just guys who've been here before that now perhaps view Stockton as their starter for the first time? Gunnar, in his own words, talked about cultivating that chemistry also a little earlier this morning.
I think going through spring was a big deal, and just having that time because it was about a month straight of just work and practice. So just getting a lot of banked reps and having this off season, just throwing 7-on-7 and working out almost every day, and just spending a lot of time together has helped a lot.
So Gunnar Stockton kind of giving you an answer very similar to what you might expect to hear from him. Mild-mannered guy, a guy who's comfortable in his own skin, but also pretty relaxed in situations like that. That certainly comes through with what he had to say right there. Quarterback speaking on behalf of Georgia at SEC Media Days, certainly a guy who knows a lot more about that is our Jake Fromm. Let's get ready to speak to him right now as a part of a Kroger Fresh Take here today on DawgNation Daily. Jake, we appreciate your time, and you've been to this event. You've done this yourself. What's it like to be where Gunnar is today? All those microphones in your face, bright lights shining on you, a bunch of cameras, everybody wanting to dissect, not even in a negative way, just in a curious way. Everybody wanting to dissect every word you have to say. What does it feel like to be Gunnar Stockton here today?
Hey, Brandon, thank you for having me. Yes, Gunner's shoes. Actually, back when I was doing it, was back in Birmingham. This looks like an incredible venue that they're at right now. But, from Gunner's perspective, this is about giving a lot without giving anything as far as messaging goes. And, man, you want to be transparent, but you're trying to keep your cards close a little bit. It's a lot of talk right now. And from his perspective, talk is cheap. Just get me to training camp, and let's get everybody on the same page to go take care of business this fall.
When you were at SEC Media Days, you had been the starter for 2 years. You had had great success. You were sort of speaking from a position of strength in a way, that you kind of knew what the job was. You knew how well equipped you were for the job. Stockton, even though age-wise he's kind of been around the program for a little while, has not been the full-time starting quarterback yet. Do you think your experience would have been different speaking to media if you hadn't had a couple of years of experience of speaking after games and actually playing in the games? You were kind of a grizzled vet by the time you did this. Gunner's in a little bit of a different station of his career as he speaks here today. How different would that have been for you if you were at Media Days before you had some actual real experience as the Georgia starting quarterback?
First off, I want to say it that Kirby has Gunnar here at SEC Media Days. That means that Kirby is trying to put Gunnar in a vocal leadership position, trying to make Gunnar comfortable of being the guy, being in the spotlight, because there is a lot that comes with being the quarterback at the University of Georgia. And I will say for myself, and then I'll speak on behalf of Gunnar as well. Hopefully he doesn't mind this, but as far as the media is concerned and getting in front of a camera, I think whenever you are just a real, genuine, authentic person, to me, it's just not a big deal. Hey, put a camera in your face and just speak truth, man. And it just kind of comes out naturally. And I think now Gunnar is slightly more quiet and a little more reserved, but that's just him. And I think you get the real, authentic, and raw Gunnar, and I think that's why a lot of people love that.
It's kind of funny. I almost think, Jake, he's more reserved now than he was like leading into the Sugar Bowl. I sort of feel like his personality was a little bit of an electric factory in New Orleans before that game compared to kind of what it is now. It almost sort of seems like, and maybe this is sort of a good strategy, it almost sort of seemed like he sort of dialed it down a little bit more. Like he's clearly not trying to be something that he's not. He's very comfortable just being himself. He's not worried about entertaining us or anything like that. He's just simply, as you say, just trying to sort of get through it. His ultimate, I guess, judgment's going to be how he plays on the field. Therefore, he doesn't seem to be putting any more energy into this than he sort of has to. It's kind of interesting. He's almost, I would say, less animated now than he was when he was sort of first sort of thrown into all of this after the SEC championship. Have you kind of noticed the same thing?
Yeah, I think he's got a little bit more, not a ton, but more experience on focusing on the things that matter. Kind of back to, hey, right now there's just a lot of talk. Gunnar's a doer, is a man of action, trying not to get caught up in all the different distractions, talking, NIL, money, all this different stuff. Gunnar is about ball, and I think he just wants to get to the field. He wants to get to the grass, and he just wants to snap the ball and go play.
So Kirby Smart earlier this morning kind of downplayed what feels like conventional wisdom to a lot of people. Well, if Gunnar Stockton is here, he's basically Georgia's starting quarterback, and this is sort of a de facto attempt to name him as such. Smart, as Kirby does, he's always sort of done this, kind of downplayed that, still a competition, blah, 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 which I get that's what Kirby's going to say. Maybe that's what Kirby sort of feels like he needs to say. And with all due respect to Ryan Puglisi, who I think is a really talented guy, I mean, can we not sort of privately among friends here admit that if Gunnar is here and if he's going through all of this, he is not doing that to then be Georgia's backup quarterback. Like, Kirby's going to say what he says, that's what we love him for, but ultimately the actions here speak louder than words, do they not?
Yes, they do. But it's I've lived it. It's about a standard in holding everybody on that roster, including coaches, accountable to the standard. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, how old, how many years you played. It doesn't matter, man. Everybody's spot is up on a one-year contract, and you have to go earn it that next year. So that's what it's about, man. It's about upholding that standard year in and year out, and really week in and week out a lot of times of saying, hey, I'm the starter. I have to go earn it every single day. And I think it starts at the top, and that's why he does that.
I want to ask you one more thing prior to that. Let me remind folks, this is our Kroger Fresh Take with former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm here today on DawgNation Daily. And, of course, summer rolls on. People are enjoying it. I love watching my kids out there every day. They're at the pool or fishing or golf, whatever else they got going on. And it's just the magic and the fun of summer. And a lot of that includes great summer cookouts and things like that. Well, for the stuff you're putting on the grill, the stuff that goes in the cooler, the plates, the napkins, everything else that makes summer such a fun time of year, you're getting stocked up for all of that at your local Kroger. And if you want an even better experience this summer between you, your family, and friends, one of the great ways to take advantage of that is by becoming a Kroger Boost member. You get all kinds of features and benefits. Free grocery delivery, free pickup. In these really hot days, those refrigerated trucks show up. That means the produce, the meat, and the things like that you want to kind of keep cool. You don't want it to get hot in some, truck bed. Well, with Kroger, that's not going to happen. You got these wonderfully refrigerated vehicles bringing this stuff to you. And so that's going to be an awesome experience. You can also have free pickup if that's more convenient for you. And on the stuff you're already buying at your local Kroger, you can get twice the fuel points on all of those purchases. So find out more about this today by going to Kroger.com/boost. That's Kroger.com/boost to find out more about this today. All right, Jake, one more thing before I let you go. It's been a little bit of a topic already this morning, the role that Will Muschamp might have at Georgia. he was not listed among the Georgia staffers in the media guide that was released. That became a little bit of a talking point on Sunday. Smart today has attempted to clarify that to say, no, Will Muschamp will still have a role on this team. His son's obviously a quarterback at Vanderbilt, and Will Muschamp certainly got plenty of money. He doesn't need to work if he doesn't want to. I think a lot of people assume that he just may not want to anymore. My question for you is this. How well have you gotten to know Coach Muschamp, if at all, and in a support staff role, whether it's part-time or when he was here every single day, how valuable is someone who's been around the game as much as Muschamp? How valuable is it when he's here? And I guess, in your opinion, how much does Georgia lose if he's not here?
Yeah, as far as a personal relationship with me and Coach Muschamp, through recruiting, through all the high school stuff going through, developed a little bit of relationship there. And then kind of over the years, being in and out of the building, working out, having a conversation here and there, Coach Smart and Coach Muschamp have a very unique relationship, right? There's not too many people really out there, and especially in the building, that have been in the shoes that Coach Smart is in right now. And I think he kind of uses Coach Muschamp a lot to bounce ideas, just see things from a different lens. Hey, what am I missing? Or are things slipping a little bit here, especially during the week as far as game planning goes, helping dial in X's and O's and details. But, man, being able to have a different lens, especially one who's had a head coaching hat on in the SEC, I think is just as huge. So in whatever capacity that Coach Muschamp wants to be involved, I think is a huge benefit to the program. And I know Coach Smart and him will get that worked out. But I think it's a big deal to have him there and in the building. It's just something you can't put a price on, in my opinion.
Jake, outstanding stuff. I appreciate all of your insight all the time, and hope you're continuing to enjoy your summer. We'll look forward to more football conversations. By the way, as you and I keep doing this each week, we're getting closer and closer to the start of fall camp. SEC Media Days means that's just kind of right around the corner. So all of that is good and exciting. Jake, we'll look forward to speaking to you very soon as a part of a Kroger Fresh Take.
Can't wait. Almost here. Thanks, Brandon.
Good stuff there, Jake Fromm, Kroger Fresh Take on the program here today. All right, let's sort of reset and regroup just for a moment. We'll kind of see where things stand. So obviously we started the show today by letting you know that five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson is getting ready to make his decision. Talked several minutes about that off the top of the program. Does not seem like that's likely to be good news for the good guys, but we'll keep our eye on that this afternoon. Also throughout the day here, we're watching to see what Kirby Smart and Gunnar Stockton and C.J. Allen and the collection of Georgia players who are on Dalen Everett, the collection of Georgia players who are on hand today, what they have to say. We've been giving you some of that from Kirby Smart throughout today's show. We've given you some from Gunnar Stockton. We've got plenty more of that today, too. And, by the way, that's all throughout the day, including later on this evening. All of our DawgNation SEC Media Days coverage that you'll be seeing on the DawgNation video channels. Hard work going on right now. We appreciate our friends at Merriweather and Tharp who've made all of this possible here today. They're your source for Georgia divorce. That's a serious conversation, and perhaps it's one that you may find as an unavoidable next step for you. But our friends at Merriweather and Tharp also love the SEC football conversation, the likes of which we get to have here at SEC Media Days. We appreciate their partnership, and I'm thankful for the advocacy they've provided to so many of the people in our audience throughout the years here. So if a divorce question is something that's on your mind right now, our friends at Merriweather and Tharp can provide an entire array of answers for you on that. So please find them online. It is GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. That is GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. Merriweather and Tharp is your source for Georgia divorce and the source for our SEC Media Days coverage here this week as well. We appreciate Merriweather and Tharp on that. All right, so as we also kind of roll through everything that's going on here today, while Kirby Smart and Georgia have been here, Auburn has been here too. Hugh Freeze has been here as well. Now, Freeze has been somewhat embattled a bit lately. The recruiting efforts for the Tigers have kind of fallen on hard times. Auburn in desperate need of wins on the field this fall. Hugh Freeze seems to be aware of that, but he also seems to be showing some confidence in his team as this pivotal season approaches. So to kind of circle back to what we would typically do for like a cruise around the SEC with our friends at Royal Caribbean, let me give you a chance to hear from Freeze right now on his outlook for his Auburn team this season. This is Auburn coach Hugh Freeze from earlier today.
We're embracing the highest of expectations. It's time for us to start climbing that mountain and winning some of those games. There's no reason with the chemistry among our staff, the additions we've added to the roster, the 2 top 10 recruiting classes. Would you love to have one more year? Sure, but there is zero reason that our team, Lord willing, we stay healthy. We're expected to compete in every single football game, and we had some difficult breaks last year go against us. So it's our turn this year for them to bounce our way. And don't forget, adding back also not.
So that is Auburn coach Hugh Freeze on that earlier this morning, saying we're ready to embrace the highest of expectations. Now, what's funny about that is that, in an interview earlier this spring, Hugh Freeze was like, hey, man, I know we got to make a bowl this year. So the idea that he's embracing the, quote, highest of expectations, maybe not quite so much. He's embracing some expectations, maybe not quite the highest of expectations. But I will tell you, even though I have been as interested in anyone at this just, plummet from Auburn from a recruiting standpoint, and as someone who, broadly speaking, believes that recruiting momentum is a harbinger for on-field momentum, I think there is some connection between those things. Auburn kind of remains the team for me that I think could be better than people realize. If we assume it's a win total of 7.5 right now, that means, you're within a standard deviation of being 8-4, which means you could have a ball bounce the right direction, which Freeze just mentioned. Maybe that puts you at 9-3. Well, now you're kind of one more lucky break away from at least being in the fringe of the college football playoff discussion. I don't think that's an impossibility for an Auburn team that, honestly, if you want a ridiculous hot take, here's the ridiculous hot take. It would not surprise me if Jackson Arnold at Auburn is just as good or if not better than John Mateer at Oklahoma. It really would not surprise. Mateer at Oklahoma is getting all of the attention. Arnold's obviously out with the Sooners because he didn't play very well a year ago. But, y'all, look at the receivers that Arnold is throwing to. Singleton comes over from Tech. Cam Coleman, I think, in a year in which a lot of freshman receivers got a lot of attention, Cam Coleman was a very, very good one. They also had a receiver from Wake Forest. They had another good freshman receiver last year in addition to Coleman. This is a really good receiving corps. I think there's a chance. Because, look, we're all going to make our predictions. They'll be in a sort of predicted order of finish by the time the week comes to a close. There are at least a couple of instances on that list where somebody's going to be, or the consensus will be, way wrong. Way wrong. Someone's likely to be way better. Almost certainly at least one team will be way worse than we think. I still sort of have Auburn circled as one of those teams that I do think could be way better this year than their perception sort of leads you to believe here right now. And we've also got, as I said before, Texas and Tennessee rolling through later on this afternoon. We'll have to give more of that to you tomorrow on DawgNation Daily presented by ServPro because they haven't gotten here yet. For now, let's also kind of make that the sort of official end of Cruise Around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean on our program and here on what has kind of turned into a very, very busy show today. Let's also give you a chance one more time to hear from Kirby Smart. So, and I'll give you 5 seconds of this because you don't care, but I'll tell you anyway. So the big podium is behind me to the left. There's also another place that Kirby Smart and the other coaches do a different press conference in. And everybody always sort of wonders the same thing of why are there two different press conference rooms? I don't necessarily have a great answer for that anymore. The one's sort of supposed to be for the print media. The one's supposed to be for sort of the broadcast media. But honestly, you got both sides sort of bleeding into both rooms. The point is the Kirby clips we gave you a little earlier were from what we kind of think of at Media Days as the smaller room. It was from the digital broadcast room the big grand ballroom behind me, the one that you see on TV for the SEC network. Smart has now spoken there. You actually saw that over your shoulder during our live broadcast here today. Smart doing all of that. Let me give you this, and this is a very quick turnaround by our guys to have this for you. Let me give you Kirby Smart, his opening statement to the media there. This is where he sets the tone for the entirety of the year. This is where some of Smart's famous catchphrases have come from in the past. Does Kirby offer any of that here today? This is Kirby Smart from the big room in the SEC Media Days just earlier this morning. Let's hear that right now on DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro.
Our team's going to be comprised of 54% first and second year players. Very big change for us. I thought last year was probably one of the most veteran teams I've been a part of. You guys know the COVID class has kind of aged out. So we had multiple players that were in their fifth and sixth year last year, especially across the offensive and defensive lines. We had a tremendous group that all went out kind of at the same time, aged out at the same time. And so we're going to be really young, especially on the offensive and defensive lines. But 54% of our players are coming into their first or second year. So what do you get with that? You get youthful exuberance. We've had practices that have been spirited. We had a great spring practice that we talked about the words fire, passion, and energy. I think the biggest thing that separates college football teams today is complacency among players versus fire, passion, and energy among players. So we've tried to highlight those traits as much as possible with our players.
So Kirby Smart addressing why fire, passion, and energy are going to be so important for his team here this year. That's a very similar message to what he expressed during spring practice, giving that to the media here today. Now, we're not done anywhere close to it when it comes to stuff from Kirby Smart. We're going to have a lot of that for you throughout the day. We'll have more of that for you here tomorrow. We've also got more SEC network guests coming up throughout the week. In fact, tomorrow on the show, you're going to hear from Cole Kubelik. Earlier this year, Cole, the terrific SEC network analyst, made some news on our show. We reacted to in a big way when he said he thought that Georgia had the best offensive line in the SEC. Tomorrow on the show, Cole with us going to go into more detail about why he thinks that's so. So jam-packed, fully loaded for the rest of the week. We'll also react to whatever happens with Tyler Atkinson today, tomorrow. So a lot of that coming up in the days ahead. But for now, let's get ready to wrap up what has been certainly a fun one in Atlanta here today. And, of course, we will do that with our golden shoe. Now, I want to show you this on the screen here for a moment. Yesterday, me and my good friend Kaylee Mansell were kind of messing around here in Atlanta. You may know it was busy in Atlanta yesterday in the fact that Beyonce was also doing, I think it was the final of her 4-night stay here at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And so the Omni Hotel had a photo op thing set up with like a Beyonce cutout. And so I was going to try to pose with it for a second to see if I could make it look real and come on here and make y'all think I'd seen Beyonce and got my picture taken. So I had Kaylee do it. We were just kind of messing around. And when she sent me this picture, do you know what Kaylee said? She said, here's a picture with the world's biggest diva and Beyonce. Can you believe she said that about me? I find that to be ridiculous. Anyway, I'll give that a golden shoe here today. Also, lousy, stinking Gators. Been a long time since they've beaten Georgia. We love laughing about that. About 1,711 days. That's how long it's been since Florida beat Georgia. That's our Gator Hater Updater. Y'all have a great day. We'll be back with you on video throughout the day and see you tomorrow at DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. We will look forward to talking to you then. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews, when you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price is promised. You can trust them on all of that. All right. I feel like we did a lot in the course of an hour. Hopefully it wasn't too much. Hopefully we didn't, jam-pack you with too much that you couldn't keep up with it. But I think we did pretty good there. Quick turnaround, a lot of the stuff from Kirby Smart. Thought Greg McElroy was very compelling. Jake Fromm, boy, what a day to have Jake on. Just as good as it gets, and obviously a little bit of the little bit of the Atkinson stuff off the top. Probably the least enjoyable part of the show, but a must-do nonetheless. All right, let's see what else. Spencer Clark said she had asked Jay-Z first, NBA. Yeah, I guess that's the case. I did not see Jay-Z yesterday, but I did see at least a reasonable facsimile of Beyonce. Anonymous Handle says, what are your thoughts on the talk of Nick Saban coming back? So, if I was Nick Saban, I would coach again. I really would. I think he's going to be about 75 years old or something like that. Who cares? He seems to be in good shape. There'd be no shortage of programs that'd probably like to have him. I don't know if it's in the SEC or not, but a lot of programs probably would like to have him. And as long as I'm healthy enough to do what I enjoy doing, which is this show, I will do it. My hope is, God willing, I'm in my 70s, if not 80s, doing this show. Never plan to retire. Hope to leave it all in the field every single day that I can. And if Nick Saban wanted to do that with his coaching career, I think that he should. I also think that, as I said earlier, Kirby Smart would be wise not to downplay this, because as someone who probably takes too much joy in sort of other people's suffering, the rumor of this, the idea that Nick Saban might return, even if it sort of escaped into the conversation accidentally, is pretty good propaganda against Alabama. I think it makes Kalen DeBoer's second year a little harder. If this thing would really get some legs and really take off, I do think it makes DeBoer's job a little harder. And so, therefore, you should want to stir the pot. I think Lane Kiffin sort of did that some yesterday. I believe that Kiffin said, yeah, I think Saban will coach again. I think that's what you should do. Now, Kiffin does it just because he's a troll. But if you want to win the propaganda war, putting this out there as an idea, yeah, I think it's probably a decently wise thing to do. Let's see what else. Foster Moss says Saban needs to go back to Michigan State to prove if he really is the GOAT. Yeah, I mean, obviously the game has changed. And, going to a place where you don't have major talent and resource advantages certainly makes the job more difficult. You almost kind of wonder, I was kind of thinking about this yesterday, could Saban be what people sort of thought of Phil Jackson as? Like, I don't know that you wanted Phil Jackson in the NBA to coach the worst team in the league. Like, nobody was of the belief that Jackson was going to make the worst team into a great team. Even when Jackson's coaching reputation was as high as it was, nobody thought he'd take the worst team and make him into the best team. That's just not what people thought he would do. But he had a great reputation as being a manager of egos, and if you're the Last Dance Bulls, if you're the Kobe Shaq Lakers, boy, the Jackson personality was significant enough that he could manage those big egos in that room because he was as well known as many of those players were. You almost kind of wonder if Saban could be the sort of king-making coach in the mold of what perhaps, Phil Jackson was in his NBA career. I kind of wonder that. In other words, if you're sort of like one coach away from a championship, could Saban be that guy and just go, sort of tack on one more of these before it's said and done for him in his career? I kind of wondered about that. I'm guessing probably not, but I still think it's a fun thing. Brad H. says that I'm putting my A&M curse on Auburn. He says, I love to see it. Maybe that's what it'll turn out to be. But you know what I'm saying, though, is that when you think about what the predicted order of finish for the SEC is going to be, you're going to have a top tier, which in some order is going to include Georgia, Texas, Alabama. You're going to have a second tier, which is going to include, in some form or fashion, LSU. By win total, you'll put Ole Miss, Tennessee in there. And then below that, you've kind of got like the Florida, A&M, kind of that group. Y'all, this happens every year. There's always going to be one team somewhat near the top that's nowhere near that good. And there is usually some room for and some movement of a team kind of below that who could work their way up. It is only human nature, it's only natural to want to try to guess who that is. And some of y'all give me a hard time about Texas A&M because years ago I made a big statement about them, erroneously of the belief that if Jimbo Fisher won a national championship, Texas A&M spent big to get him, then he must be ready to kind of at least win at a level at A&M they had not had prior to that. Turned out to be wrong. But it's only natural to want to figure out whoever the surprise team is going to be. And eventually every team gets mentioned, so therefore almost nothing kind of counts as a surprise once the season actually gets here. But it's only natural to want to do that. Leonard Williams asked about Tyler Atkinson. Leonard, I'm afraid that appears to be true. The Smart, at least as of when the show began, and I don't expect this to change, the Smart money, and I do mean that literally, seems to have Atkinson going to Texas. Disappointing news, but without sounding too trite, you can't win them all, I don't reckon. SEM Dog says, I doubt Saban coaches again, but if he does, it will be a place like Michigan, Oklahoma, USC, a place with great potential and need of an upgrade over recent years. Yeah, I mean, if you want to have fun with the rumor, the easiest way to have fun with it is to say LSU. Saban just went into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Did you see this? Was very complimentary of the LSU program, reflected back fondly on his time there. Brian Kelly has sort of a weird relationship with the locals there, which only significant winning this season will cure. Scott Woodward is the LSU AD. The one thing you know about Scott Woodward is anytime they have a job opening, Scott Woodward's prevailing philosophy is spend as big as you can to hire the most famous name possible. So if you want to have fun with all of that, the easiest dot to connect would be a place like LSU, which you can win. I don't think Saban should coach. I don't think Saban probably will coach again. I don't think he probably will. But as I said, I'd have no problem with it if he did. I think that people should do what they want, and they should do it for as long as they want to. And if you're healthy enough, you probably owe it to yourself to do the things you're healthy enough to do, including this very strenuous job. And I do somewhat revel in the notion that this rumor, if it were to really live beyond just what happened yesterday, if it were to live and take on some life within the hot take industrial complex for a little while, I think it's bad for Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, and I love that part of this. Let's see what else. UJ Marine says Aggies 8-4, always have been, always will be. It certainly seems like that's the case. I almost wonder if this year, and I like Mike Elko as a coach. I think he's a really good coach. They're the one team in the SEC that's sort of the hardest for me to get kind of a feel on. I have said before, I think they have the least happy fan base in the entire of the SEC, even though from a projection standpoint, they're still kind of expected to be somewhat good. I think that's a very unhappy fan base. And I think it could get real fast if they're not careful. Garrison Tucker weighing in here. Couldn't quite tell what that was about. DT on Gunner facing the media scrum. I can tell you this. Whatever Gunner faces today will not be more intense than what he faced in New Orleans. Y'all, that was a massive media presence that day, and it was descending on him in particular because of how new the story was. It's one of those things where, you just could see, and we've done a good job this week of kind of showing you the picture. Like, it's almost like, Cody, would it be hard to, put the camera? Is that C.J. Allen in the corner over there? See if you can get that on C.J. Allen. So this is live. You're seeing this happening right now. That's a relatively small scrum overall. That's not super big. Now it was for much bigger earlier. He's just been talking for a while. But still, imagine having that many people in your face. I can tell you right now, it's not comfortable. I don't love being in scrums because I don't like that many people close to me. Imagine they're all kind of pointing at you, putting a microphone in your face. I'll tell you this, if you're not used to it, the lights are weird. Lights are brighter than you realize. They're kind of weird. As I put my hand over the camera because I wasn't thinking. Lights are kind of weird. All of that sort of strange. And so what you see, and that's a really good perspective on C.J. Allen. Y'all, what Gunner faced in New Orleans, I'm not exaggerating. It's like 10 times that. Every media person on the planet was all around him, and he handled it just fine. He really did. This is the kind of personality you do like. There are some folks who go about it the opposite way, and sometimes it works for them. Like Diego Pavia yesterday kind of owned this place for a little bit. It's weird to say for a Vanderbilt quarterback, but he wore a very flashy suit. He said a lot of provocative things. He did the big interview with Bussin' with the Boys the other day and kind of stirred that up a little bit. Like Diego Pavia had his moment of, hey, I'm going to embrace this and I'm going to be part of the show. Or for a brief moment, I might be the show. Gunnar Stockton doesn't want to do that, but Gunnar Stockton's also apparently not bothered by this. He just does what is required. He shows up, he's asked a question, he offers a polite answer, and he gives you no more than that. Selfishly, it doesn't work for me because I don't get the good sound bites. Like, it's very hard to, y'all know me, I'm a carnival barker. If I can find good sound bite, of course we're going to blow it up, and of course we're going to do a bunch of stuff with it. This is how I feed my family. Of course that's what we're going to do. Gunnar doesn't really give you that, but Gunnar does what's required of him in the event. Of course he does. So, by the way, great job by our folks back there. So this is the Diego Pavia suit. So, it's just a little bit of a more, I don't mean this in a bad way, a little bit more of an ostentatious look. I also agree with Garrison Tucker, and we'll turn this into, the fashion show. But I'm ready for sneakers with suits to go away. I'm ready for that to go away. Coaches have been doing that for a long time now. Players kind of like to do that. I'm kind of ready for that to go away. I just am not. I think if it was cool once, it's sort of tired now, I believe. I also think when the coaches do it, it's try hard. Players, if they want to do it, they're free to do that.
You got a position.
I just am sort of
ties.
ready for some. So Jay Black asked me about bow ties. I think a bow tie looks fine on Diego Pavia. I cannot wear a bow tie. Like, my big fat face cannot be seen in a bow tie. It just cannot. I would say, generally speaking, I'm anti-bow tie. But if a guy like Diego wants to wear one, and we've seen a lot of these throughout the years at media days, we saw more than just Diego wearing one yesterday. If our buddy Caden Lee, I believe, was wearing one yesterday too. Bow ties look good on good slender faces. They look terrible on big fat faces like mine. I would say that generally speaking, I'm not pro bow tie, but if it looks good on you, then do what you want. Yeah, UGA Marine also favors a little bit more of a traditional dress shoe. I think it's just sort of time to bring that back. And honestly, dress shoe technology is way better than it used to be because everybody favors a more comfortable style of dress now. If you get some of these, I'm not going to give a brand name away, but some of these sort of famous dress shoe brands, y'all, the soles in those things are as comfortable as sneakers now anyway. I would like to see that come back because I think it just sort of looks better. I'll tell you what I'm really against, and this is going to make some of you mad. I don't mean for it to. I would rather see you wear sneakers with a suit than novelty socks. I am so anti. Now, I do wear Georgia novelty socks sometimes just for the fun of it, but I am not particularly in favor of novelty socks. All right, let me pull some Facebook comments up here for a minute. By the way, a lot more coming today. Let me get some Facebook comments. I'll pull those up. We got a show later on this evening. We're going to hopefully get our chance to speak to Gunnar Stockton. We're going to speak to Dalen Everett. We got a lot of fun here coming up, and a lot of that's going to be on the show for you tomorrow. Also, as I told you, we have a really good interview coming with Cole Kubelik on tomorrow's show, too, which should be a lot of fun as Cole breaks down why he thinks that Georgia will be his best offensive line in the SEC here this season. Preston Golden says no socks with dress shoes. Well, I'm from the South, and in the summer we don't wear socks. I'm not wearing socks today. I'll tell you who wasn't wearing socks yesterday. This might surprise you. In fact, if I gave you a guess of SEC coaches who were not wearing socks, I think if I had to assume, the coach that you might least assume was wearing socks was not wearing socks yesterday. How about LSU coach Brian Kelly going sans socks? He had no socks, and what I would almost describe as sort of a Sperry boat shoe almost. Yesterday I was a little surprised by that. By the way, very important here, our buddy Brian Whitaker checks in on Facebook to say he was in Monday Night Raw last night at the BJCC in Birmingham, the Birmingham Jefferson County Civic Center. He says, it was great last night. We had such a good time. Roman Reigns returned. I did see that. The place erupted. There is nothing better than when the star wrestler makes a surprise appearance and the crowd just goes wild. That's one of those things, you either get that or you don't. Brian, I'm glad you got the big appearance last night from Roman Reigns. What a fun thing that is. What a cool place to be in Birmingham for that last night. Gerald Harmon says, I don't have a Mr. Potato Head. I do. Y'all don't realize. My head is gigantic. And if I shaved my head, you'd even know it even more so. Very big head, very, very fat face. Unfortunately, that's the case. All right, what else on Facebook here for a moment? A lot of comments rolling in. Billy Cloud says, are we going to get Tyler Atkinson? Billy, I would love to tell you the answer to that question is yes. It appears, though, that is probably not likely to be the case, unfortunately, for Georgia on that, unless something changes, but I don't really think it's going to. We did a bunch of that off the top of the show here today, just some general thoughts on that. I'll give you something new, though, that I haven't said before. And this sounds like hope and cope, and I understand it. That's why I'm hesitant to say stuff like this sometimes. But the one thing you've seen from Georgia over the last couple of cycles is winning with the sort of premium positions they haven't always won with. For instance, they got a five-star quarterback in this class. They got a five-star receiver in last year's class and several very, very highly rated near five-star type guys. I would say winning with these premium positions that Georgia hasn't always won with in the past, I do think it makes the blow a little softer if Atkinson goes somewhere else today. I do think that's the case. And listen, if there's a bunch of Texas fans who are tuned in to troll us, they'll laugh at that and say that's copium, but that is my opinion. Lucy Bowers-Boykin checking in today. Appreciate that. Don Williams says Texas is spending all that oil money before the law is signed. And one of the things that now we don't get every prediction right, and when we don't, we try to, admit that. But one of the predictions we said before was, and this is sort of turning out to be true, is that the aftermath of the House settlement and the NIL stuff and the scrutiny of the fair market value of those NIL deals, we just sort of looked at this and said, I'm not sure how this is ever going to work. And in the immediate kind of adoption of this new policy, which went into effect July 1st, early days, there was a lot of saber rattling about the Deloitte folks being very aggressive in the way in which they were trying to examine these NIL deals that recruits and players were signing and trying to determine what was fair and what was not. They were trying to make this a real body with some real teeth. Well, going back to Friday, there was reporting, Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports, folks like that, that there is total controversy related to this. And the plaintiff's attorneys from the House settlement case, Jeffrey Kessler, you perhaps know who that is, all kinds of just people are furious about this here right now. And apparently the challenges that we assumed were coming from all of this, they really are perhaps on their way. So the point is, we kind of go into a world where clearly programs are using NIL still and kind of using it in kind of the, traditional way as it has been used since 2021. Georgia's probably doing some of that too. I don't know, but that's clearly the cloud that sort of hangs over this. UJ Moraine says, was Kelly wearing the no-show socks? I believe it was totally sockless. Also, I'll tell you this. I'm not really a fan of no-show socks because my theory is the no-show socks always show. I've never seen actual no-show socks that don't show. If they do, they're just not big enough, and they're going to slip off your heel eventually anyway. So to my eyes, Kelly was wearing no socks. Jason Duke says, what time for the Tyler Atkinson? So as of this morning, and maybe something has happened since then, as of this morning, all we knew it was going to happen sometime during the McAfee show. Do we still know that to be the case? Is the Atkinson thing Do we have is it still just sometime during the McAfee show, or is there a more specific time for that now? Okay, so as far as we know, it's still just sometime during the McAfee show. McAfee is going to interview Tyler Atkinson. And I told this to the folks earlier. McAfee was in Atlanta last night ruining the home run derby on ESPN. And by the way, how bad is that broadcast, y'all? This is not the point. I grew up as like a teenager. The home run derby was amazing, amazing. We don't know how to broadcast this event anymore. It's like I told you about statues. You remember we talked about this the other day? We had better statue technology. We made better statues 1,000 years ago than we do now. A statue of some sort of Renaissance artist, from 1,000 years ago looks way more lifelike than like modern statues of current sports stars. We've just sort of lost the ability to make statues as a society. I put the home run derby in this same category of, think about like 99 home run derby Fenway Park. Height of the steroid era. Players cartoonishly large, balls sailing into Providence. What an awesome event. But like the cameramen used to know how to follow the ball as it left. They don't know how to do this anymore. Why can't we broadcast a home run derby as a society anymore? It's amazing to me. It's better this year than it was a year ago. The whole thing's a disaster. The point is, McAfee was a part of that last night. So I thought the thing with McAfee and Atkinson might happen here in Atlanta, but I think they've actually all gone back to his regular place, which he does the show from Indianapolis, right? So I think that's where they are for that. So it's kind of a long answer to a short question, but sometime this afternoon. George Herndon says that Kelly thinks he's a hipster. Now, there was a time a few years ago when, because I sort of feel like we're in the post-hipster era. I don't think hipster's a thing anymore. We're post-hipster. SEC Media Days used to be a very hipster-ish event, I feel like. And I feel like the coaches were kind of getting into that. I think we're not in the hipster era anymore. Hipsters were sort of a thing 10 years ago. No, more than that, 12, 13 years ago. I think we're well removed from hipster culture. But hipster stuff used to be very big at Media Days. I don't believe it is anymore. Ken Holcomb says, what did ESPN do to ruin the home run derby? And Cody's a cameraman. He understands this. They can't follow the ball anymore. They can't do it. When you watch the guy swing, you can't tell where the ball is going, which is the only thing anybody cares about. I don't know if they need to put an overlapping shot of behind home plate with the swing superimposed on the front of it. They also do it so fast, and if you want to grab Mike, you can. They also do it so fast that by the time they show a ball doing something, you can't tell if it was the ball he just hit, the ball that he hit 3 pitches ago. So do you, as a expert cameraman, and you are, Cody Chaffins joins us.
Yep.
Do you agree with me that the home run derby on ESPN is an abomination of television?
They just need to give me, the PGA Tour will give you the arc every time, right?
Yeah, the pro
Just
tracing.
give me the behind home plate and let's do that, because you're right. You watch the counters going up and you're like, I didn't even see that home run.
Yeah.
Or again, it's the home run derby. I don't need a shot of his teammates reacting every time. No, just let's watch the ball go over the fence or not. And they come up with all these weird angles, and it's just confusing.
But here's a question. There's no other sports happening. Why are we in such a rush? They're just flying through this. At one point in time last night, one of the guys, I forget who it was, is just swinging so fast that there's no way that. Why are we in a rush? There's nothing else on. Just take your time, pick a few star players, and let the ball fly out of the ballpark and let us just sit there and watch it and find us.
You need the black and white Henry Aaron home run. Do you remember the TV show?
Honestly, when I was a kid,
They could do it better.
ESPN, my dad watched this, and so I knew what it was. When I was a kid, ESPN used to show old school home run derby it was like a wrestling match, a one-on-one battle between Mickey Mantle and Hank Aaron, and a guy named Rocky Calavito was always on there. Harmon Killebrew was on there. Go back and watch some footage of this. In the it had to be 50s, right?
Yeah,
1950s, early 1960s, black and white. Every ball that's hit, you can watch it go sailing over the fence. We can't do this anymore. There are so many things as a society that we used to could do that we just can't do anymore.
We don't get the back anymore, though.
Honestly, I miss Chris Berman, which is crazy. But I would take late 90s, early 2000s era Berman and that broadcast. I mean, poor Cody Rhodes comes on last night. Jeff Passan, I promise we're going to shut up about this. Jeff Passan has no idea who Cody Rhodes is. Rhodes is trying to give the championship belt to Big Dumper for winning the thing, and Passan totally ruins that moment. What is going on? So thank you, Cody. Look at the and this is going to sound self-serving when I mean this as sincerely as possible. Look at the video we shoot today. Every video we get, the shot over the shoulder of all this stuff, it's better video than what ESPN had last night on the home run derby. Barry Watkins also bringing up a good point. So, and I won't get into the whole thing about the All-Star game being in Atlanta, how long Atlanta was unfortunately asked to wait on this. But when you envision the All-Star game being in Atlanta, the notion that it actually happens and the Braves are such an afterthought in a moribund season like this, boy, that's just so sad. So sad. So sad. UGA Marine says that hipster culture is still going strong in Austin. Well, Austin's clearly a very hipsterish city. But even when I was there in October, I saw a lot of cool people. People were way cooler than me. But I don't know that what I would define as hipster is still quite the vibe there. Certainly a much cooler crowd than I would aspire to be. But whatever. All right. Anything else before we go? Let me go back to YouTube for a second. Let's Experience Earth says, so disappointed about us not being able to keep Tyler and stay. Yeah, I'm disappointed too. It is an L. Georgia took the L here. Georgia took the L. By the way, speaking of wrestling, the world's strongest man, Mark Henry, right there to my left. What a cool thing it is to see him here today. You never know who you're going to see at SEC Media Days. But Mark Henry is literally right there, which is very funny. Yeah, so it's you take the L when you don't get Atkinson, but that's the way that it goes. Chef Jay Bowen says, "How's the food at SEC Media Days?" I try not to complain about food when I go to a media event because they are choosing to feed me free of cost. So I'm going to refrain from any kind of criticism about that. I will say, and once again, our guy Cody Chavins had to endorse some of this yesterday. I'm a very picky eater. And so I'm always like they had some nice fried chicken yesterday. I'm sort of having to sift through that to find the white meat. They had some nice pulled pork yesterday, but it had a Carolina sauce on it. I'm trying to scrape it away because I don't like mustard. So food's fine. I'm a very picky eater, so that was a problem. Foster Moss said I need a Snickers since I act like a diva. I couldn't believe that Kaylee said that about me yesterday. I am not a diva, though. I am not a diva. I said this the other day. I'm a little fussy. I'm a picky eater. I'm weird about things. But I am not diva-ish.
The rebuttal is it takes one to know one.
Let's do one or two more. That's exactly right. As Jay Black says, when it comes to diva-ish behavior, it perhaps takes one to know one. So maybe Kaylee knows of what she speaks there on that. All right, let me get one or two more YouTube comments. We're going to go. Anonymous Handle says, I seem at ease in my element when I'm out and about. It's funny you say that because I would say that doing the shows remotely for me is much more difficult. There's a slight delay. We had a weird glitch to begin the show, which only lasted, thankfully, for a couple of seconds. But, the friendly confines of the studio, you sort of know how everything is going to go. When you're out here like this, I can barely, when Jake Fromm is speaking, I'm having to mash the headphones to my ear because, it's just like total chaos around us all the time. We've also kind of occupied sort of an obnoxious footprint within the room here. So it's kind of a haphazard mess, but I'm happy to know that you feel like it's running smoothly because sometimes in the moment you're not quite so sure. Jeremy Harbin pointing out that Austin does have certainly a robust comedy scene. It's amazing how, Austin's sort of been taken over by comedy. It's really amazing how big that's become. Amazing, really. Christopher W. says, I think they speed up the home run derby because of the shortened attention span of people lately. Perhaps that's true, but honestly, watching a ball, especially the one that O'Neal Cruz hit last night, I think it's 500 and something feet. Like watching a ball sail over the fence is just inherently interesting. It just is. I can't believe they're so bad at broadcasting it. And by the way, that outfit that produces that home run derby is the one that gives college football all of its marching orders. So keep that in mind. Let us see what else. Anything before we go here? So a good time. Foster Moss also mentioning what a busy weekend it's been in Atlanta. You had 3 wrestling events, 4 Beyonce concerts, and at least 2 really big all-star events, including the game coming up here tonight. So it has legitimately been crazy how much is going on in Atlanta, like at one time. Wild to see, but also kind of fun to be in the mix for all of that in addition to SEC Media Day. So really fun stuff. All right, we got massive coverage for you all day today. We're going to get our chance to speak to some of the Georgia players, including Gunnar Stockton, Dalen Everett. We'll hear more from Kirby Smart kind of throughout the day here too. Arch Manning's going to be here later on. You'll surely have some interest in that. So there is a bunch to provide you. We'll give it all to you. But for now, let me say thanks for being a part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Find them online, rsandrews.com. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time. They do the work that's promised, the price. Promise you can trust them on that. So make sure you check them out there. And if you have a plumbing emergency, R.S. Andrews can take care of that for you, too. Also, later on this evening, we'll have a special Media Days broadcast courtesy of our friends at Merriweather and Tharp. We'll give that to you. That'll be fun. And back tomorrow, DawgNation Daily, presented by ServPro. We will look forward to talking to you then.